Tobias Ellwood. Hi, Tobias. Good to speak to you this morning. So, obviously you're chair of these sort of committees. Talk to us about what will happen, how will be delivered the news, and what might happen next.
Well, if I may, can I just first express my condolences for what's happened in Nottingham, with people's lives just torn apart by this tragedy that's taken place. And very much our thoughts and prayers with all those who are affected. My goodness, you know, a key role of members of parliament is to communicate. So let me make this very, very clear indeed. Colleagues have peaked already on this issue, as indeed I think a nation has too. The longer this public pantomime drags on, you know, the more Boris loses support from a once very loyal base, and then the more Labour policies avoid scrutiny, and the more the Prime Minister's plans and vision, which was starting to gain traction, are overshadowed. The public actually want us to get back to politics. Johnson has resigned his seat before the report was published, I should say, rather than taking his arguments and presenting them to the Commons, which he could have done. This is looking increasingly desperate. And this should not really be the legacy of any Prime Minister, all dragging on a distraction from us, as I say, focusing on these more important issues: the state of the economy, interest rates, cost of living crisis, and of course, Ukraine. It's time to draw a line and move forward. And I hope the release of this publication today will allow us to do that.
Meantime, speaking of distractions, Boris Johnson has highlighted what he refers to in relation to Sir Bernard Jenkin. He's part of the committee, as you know. And he allegedly went to a drinks party held by the Commons Deputy Speaker, Dame Eleanor Lang, in December of 2020, while London was in Tier 2 measures restricting indoor mixing. As a result, the former Prime Minister says, first of all, Sir Bernard Jenkins should have recused himself. He didn't, and now he should resign. What do you think?
Well, I'm not aware that Bernard Jenkins misled Parliament. That allegation against Bernard Jenkins will first need to be investigated by the police. The report states very, very clearly, the publication, that there is no basis for Johnson's claim that senior officials gave him assurances that COVID guidance had not been broken. And that's pretty black and white. And yet Boris Johnson has said many times that he received no assurances. So if Boris Johnson is unhappy with the committee findings, or indeed anybody on the committee, the personalities and so forth, he could easily have made a personal statement in the Commons. That's the process, and presented his arguments prior to a full vote of the House, because it will be for the House to determine whether they support this publication or not. He's chosen to abandon all those possible avenues of approach and quit Parliament in its entirety. So now, coming late in the day to say, I'm unhappy with an individual, this isn't the process of somebody, I believe, who is going to win the argument.
It's interesting. I was reading the papers this morning, I'm sure you have as well, Tobias Ellwood, where the reference to the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, potentially trying to portray himself as a martyr, that it's a kangaroo court, that it's been a witch hunt. Is he trying to pave the way for a potential comeback?
Well, of course, this is his long-term intention. But let me make it really clear. Johnson's confidence stemmed from the huge support he received from the party base. That was really, really clear. He was loved by members across the country. But this is changing before our very eyes. There's now disappointment, even anger, that the party, the activists, are left to pick up the pieces with limited time to repair this fallout as the next election looms ever closer. You know, I say this directly to the few individuals who are still fueling this news cycle. Is this really what you want your legacy to be? Putting self-interest before party, before the country, deliberately harming dozens of MPs' prospects of holding on to their seats at the next elections? You know, if your idols are Margaret Thatcher and Winston Churchill, if they were around, what would they make of your behavior? Our party was beginning to regroup as our Prime Minister navigates us into ever calmer, more sensible waters and return to fiscal responsibility. This government is expected to bring forward, a vote. It's important that Parliament is seen to complete the process. I hope when that vote takes place, we can now draw that line.
To that end, thoughts on Nadine Dorris? What would you say to her? Nadine, you've made your decision, off you go, or is she right to go at her own pace and time?
Well, I include that in what I've just said, because when you have 2 by-elections taking place, but a third delayed until potentially we return in September, this just drags the damage out. It does nobody any favors whatsoever. It harms the party. It's not good for the nation. It distracts the government. So please, let's send in your letter to the Chancellor. Make it clear that you're stepping back. Allow those by-elections all to take place on one day. It will be tough for us, there's no doubt about it. But there's enough time between now and the general election for us to sell out, state our stall as to how we intend to govern the country, so people can make a fair comparator between whether they want Labour and potentially higher taxes, or a Conservative Party run by Rishi Sunak running the country.
OK, it's always a pleasure. Tobias Ellwood, thank you.